So a year ago at this point in time, I was just getting started on a summer sabbatical. It was my first break from leadership here in NLCF in more than 21 years. And it gave me a time to step back and spend some time reflecting with the Lord on where we had been and also where we were headed. And I haven't had an opportunity too much yet this year to speak with everyone about that time away. But today I get a couple minutes to share a few key takeaways. Now, stepping away from all the roles and responsibilities was definitely strange. As I had said, it had been 21 years that I had been here in town as a townie year-round, a role within NLCF. And prior to that, 4 years as a student in NLCF and 4 LTs in every summer. So it was nonstop for probably 24 years. And it was strange last summer. There was a lot of things that I missed. We traveled a lot, and I ended up being away from Blacksburg a lot more than originally planned. And early on, I could tell I was getting antsy to get back to seeing my people, to be in here. I missed being a part of this church community that I call home, a part of this family. And yet, as the summer went on, one thing that felt more uncertain was what would it look like when I returned? At that point, I had been a pastor here at NLCF for over 4 years. I'd been a part of our staff team for 20, our teaching team for 16. And stepping away from all of those roles gave me a chance to listen freshly to God's voice, not only regarding my own role, but our church as a whole. And it was late in my sabbatical, while vacationing in Florida with David's family the last week of July, that I woke up one morning at 3 a.m., and I couldn't go back to sleep. And then the next day, the same thing happened. And I was like, all right, I think this is the Spirit prompting me. I should get up and I should go on a prayer walk. So I slipped out of our beach unit without waking up David and the girls and made my way down to the beach. We were in Siesta Key on the Gulf Coast, and because of the sea turtle population there, they are really careful to keep the beach dark. So all of the homes that line the beach, nobody has outdoor lights on the beach area. And so I get down to the beach. Like I said, it's about 3 a.m, and it's so dark, I can't see more than 5 to 10 feet in front of me. And I'm like, all right, so here we go, God. I don't know what's out here, but we're just going to start walking. And over time, the moon was bright, and my eyes began to adjust, and I could see a little bit more, like about 20 feet down the way. And I just began this conversation with the Lord out loud, and me speaking and me listening and listening to him speak, and just having this conversation that was very, very meaningful for many reasons, and also that lasted several hours until the sun finally came up. And during this walk, there was a lot of really cool moments, many that I don't have time this morning to share. But one of them was that I found a child's life jacket and a beach chair on a pile of trash. And these were 2 things that I had almost purchased the night before at Walmart, but decided not to. And it was this clear, tangible sign of the Lord's provision to me and his presence right there in that moment. I knew he was with me and guiding me, and I can tell any of you more about that story later. It was pretty wild the way that I came across that. But it was this vocal, way that God was saying, I am right here, and we are having this conversation together. And he was actively answering my prayers. And so what I do want to highlight this morning is that it was during that prayer walk that I felt like, for the first time, the Lord gave me an unexpected release from my role here as a pastor. Now, to explain that, I first have to share that I never set out to be a pastor in the first place. I have always loved being a part of our staff team here, our teaching team here, and I always did that as that role as a volunteer while I worked other jobs in the community. Ministry has been something that came out of the overflow of my relationship with God, and it was never my primary vocation. I have a tattoo on the back of my right shoulder that is the word rose written in Chinese characters, and that represents who I am. It's my maiden name, Rose, written in the Chinese culture that I married into with Chinn. And in the middle of that is a verse reference, Isaiah 61, 1 through 4. And these are verses that I felt like God gave me back in college for what I was called to do. So that image represents who I am and what I'm called to do. And if you know Isaiah 61, 1 through 4, it speaks of preaching good news to the poor, binding up the brokenhearted, bringing beauty from ashes, and releasing the captives. And so that's what I have always set out to do. Preaching and teaching God's word and truth has been a love of my life, and helping people find healing through counseling have been, those two things, the major calls in my life. And my ministry in NLCF has always been a way that God has used me to serve my local church community that I love, but never something that I sought out to be my primary job. And yet, a few years back, there came a season where God made it clear that my voice and presence were needed to step up in a way. And after I had shifted out of my last kind of full-time counseling job, it was during that season that I stepped more into ministry. And in that season also, I became ordained as a pastor. I had no idea how long that season would last, and I was not entering sabbatical looking for it to end. But on that walk on the beach, I felt like the Lord spoke clearly to me that it was time for another shift. And I felt a release from that season. I didn't know exactly what that meant or would look like, but what I did know was that God had built a healthy pastoral leadership team here at NLCF, and I knew we were in a new season as a church, one that has us unified between collegiate and generations and ready to live out God's kingdom mission together to bless our towns, campuses, and communities. And I was certain of this, that I felt like the Lord showed me that the season of cultivating and sowing this unity had come to a place where we were now ready to live into the harvest of that. And with that, it could mean a new structure to some of our leadership. It's not that I was looking to leave the pastoral group that I was a part of. I mean, I love these friends. It was more like both the church and I were ready for some next natural steps. When I think about my 4 co-pastors at that point, I think about Jeanette, who was one of my college roommates. I think about Crystal and Robbie, 2 people that I remember when they were freshmen here at NLCF and getting to know across the years. I remember Steve in his days as a student at Radford NLCF when he played the bass guitar in the worship band, and I would get to go guest preach over there sometimes. And I've walked through a lot of life with Steve and Crystal and Robbie and Jeanette. They're good friends, people I hold dear. I wasn't looking to leave that group. There were no bad things happening. There were no secret issues going on. But the truth was that I felt like God telling me, for you, this season is over, and a new one is emerging. I have been counseling a few clients here and there over the previous 3 years, and I knew that I wanted to do that more. I love what I do as a mental health counselor, and I feel very alive when doing it. It also puts me in a place where I have a lot of proximity to people who are not followers of Jesus. And that was an area of my life that I had begun to miss when I was primarily focused on NLCF. And so once I was back in the fall, I began a series of conversations with my co-pastors that have kind of led us to this point where we were seeking out what would God have for us in this next season. We weren't trying to hide what we've been doing. We really have been trying to give God space to guide us into what is next for NLCF. So although my role in the future is going to look different, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving. I'm still part of our staff team here in NLCF. I'm part of our subgroup along with Steve focused on generations. I'm still part of our teaching team. I've had a chance this year to step in to work with our youth and to help launch another small group within generations. I'm not stepping away. It's more that I'm shifting my role in a way that opens doors for me to focus on different areas of NLCF, because NLCF is in a very good and healthy and strong place. And we are in a season where we have this ability to focus on unified growth and mission together. Now, we don't know all the exacts of everything that means yet because we've never done this before. Until 2 years ago, we'd never had a pastor leave and then become a faceless tithing congregant, and Jim blazed that trail for us. And so now we're in this place where, I'm stepping out of my role as a pastor, but I'm not leaving here. And I love this group. I trust this group. If that doesn't speak to anything, I don't know what does, that I would say, I trust the other leaders around me, that when God says, I have a different place for you right now, I'm good with that, because I know and I believe in what he is doing together. So while we don't have exactly all the answers today, what we do know is that God has led us to this point, and he is good and faithful, and so we know he's going to provide everything we need from this point forward. I have loved being your pastor for the last 5 years. And I want you to know that even if it's not my formal title any longer, I'm still your sister in Christ. I'm committed to you. I'm committed to the work that God is doing in your life, each and every one of you. And so I'm here. And I love you, and I love NLCF.